Earlier today, I spoke to the 5th and 6th grade, in addition to 7 to 12, kind of all together with some of the parents. And so I kind of lead off by telling them what a school attorney does. And so I'll do a little bit of the same for you. A summarized version of a phone call that I got, which I explained to the students the other day, was this. Student sitting in class opens up a Snapchat. Have you heard of Snapchat? Students, everybody's using it, right? Or if they're not, they're lying to you. Got Snapchat. Student in class takes a picture of his private parts, hold out his pants, takes a picture of his private parts, sends that picture to another girl sitting in another class in the school. She opens the picture, shows it to some of her friends, and before the image goes away, takes a screenshot. I told the students, in that particular case, no fewer than 3 felonies were committed in the state of Nebraska. And so that's kind of how I lead in. As a school attorney, that's the sort of phone call that I get. It is, Bobby, this thing happened on social media, inside of school, outside of school, over the weekend, and now here's what we're dealing with. And so that's basically the gist of my presentation, at least as it relates to speaking to you guys as parents, is to try to pass along as much of the useful stuff as I can, and scaring you only enough to help have conversations with your students about the things that I told them today. I like telling this story. One time I was giving this presentation, and I gave it to students during the day, and then I had a father come up after the presentation, before the parent presentation, and he said, "I need your address." I kind of took a step back. He's a big burly guy, and I'm thinking, oh man, I said something, and he's going to come hunt me down. He said, no. My 7th grade daughter came to your presentation earlier today. She came home and told me I never want to be on social media, I want to get rid of my cell phone, and I'm never going to have a boyfriend. He said, so I'd like to send you a Christmas card. So I don't know if any of that will happen for you, but I do hope to pass along some information which is helpful to you in starting the sort of conversations that I think are necessary to make sure that kids stay safe online. And the fact of the matter is, in this cat and mouse game, they are always going to be leading us, right? I'm a school attorney, I deal with this stuff every day, and inevitably I'll get a call, probably once a month, about some new app that students are using. And so I'm somebody that tries to research this and tries to figure out what are the cutting edge apps, what are the apps that students are using most frequently, and I'm often surprised. I am the father of a 16-month-old daughter, and it scares me how far I know I'm going to be behind her by the time she has a cell phone and starts using this stuff. So the basis of my presentation tonight is hopefully give you some information, like I said, which will be helpful to you both from a kind of a monitoring and checking perspective, but also the information that I pass along to students to help have discussions about some of the serious consequences that can occur. So first we're going to talk about cyberbullying. There are 3 sets of consequences. Consequences that can happen at school, civil consequences, meaning yes, we've had parents that have been drawn into court to pay damages because their students are bullying other people online. It's this crazy new series of lawsuits, and like the first ants at a picnic, leave it to lawyers to figure out how to sue somebody over people that are engaging in cyberbullying. So we'll talk about some of these cases, in addition to criminal consequences. We've had students in Nebraska that have been charged with really serious crimes, including felonies, for engaging in things like making threats online. And second, we'll talk about sexting. Sexting is by far the biggest concern that we have from a legal perspective as we pass information along to parents. We have had students as young as 2nd grade taking and sending inappropriate pictures of themselves. I don't think that's because they dreamt up that being a good idea. I just think it's so common now that they've heard about it. And they maybe saw a brother or sister or somebody doing that. The fact of the matter is, I don't think there's any time which is too early to start these conversations. And they're difficult ones to have, and I understand that. And I talk to 5th and 6th graders about things like inappropriate pictures. Not because I want to scare them, not because I want to cause them any apprehension, but because we are seeing this stuff happen that early. And so my hope after the presentation today is that you have the information that I talk to students about, in addition to some things that you'll find helpful. So one of the most I think interesting things that we're seeing now is more and more, forever, these studies have come out saying, what are the most dangerous things that are facing kids? And for the first time ever, and it was truly a sea change, we've got things like bullying, internet safety, child abuse, sexting, and these sorts of things creeping up the list of the top 10 issues and difficult problems that students are facing today. So what we see and what we're seeing are things that probably drive you crazy. Trends away from students, trends away from Facebook and other sites where parents are present. So I always ask the students, Do you have a Facebook account? A lot of them raise their hands, yes. But have your parents ruin Facebook for you because they're on it? All the hands stay up, right? You've ruined Facebook because you're on it. And so the fact of the matter is, apps that are coming out now are not like Facebook. They're not like Twitter. They're not like Instagram. They're driving kids toward messaging, picture sharing, things that can be done anonymously, right? It's no secret that one of the most popular apps is Snapchat. And it's one of the most popular apps because, one, it has pretty much the attention span that kids are used to, which is a few seconds. And two, it's something which allows them to message folks either anonymously or at a minimum, the message that they send disappears, right? So we're seeing trends away from places where you're at and toward anonymity. For example, this is from a big national study that they did. That's why we go on Twitter and Instagram. My mom doesn't have that. I have 2 Facebook accounts, right? If you've never thought about this, one very common thing that we see, especially as it relates to cyberbullying, is students will have multiple accounts. There are a whole series of cases that are coming out now about Finstagram accounts, fake Instagram accounts. Students are creating 2. The one that they want their parents to see, right? The Facebook account that they share pictures that grandma will like. And then the fake Facebook account, or the Facebook account where they are intending to be anonymous so that they can have conversations they don't want you to see using these apps. And again, trends toward anonymity, not just with their peers, but also this, for some reason, this big wave that's happening where students will accept friend requests from people that they don't even know. And it's because if everybody's anonymous, how do you know who really is and isn't your friend? If there's somebody who says, this is who I am, that's about the extent of the verification that you have in terms of who that person actually is. So we'll talk about some cases which have happened here in Nebraska where students have accepted these anonymous friend requests and been real close to getting in a lot of trouble. So one thing I'd like to, 2 things to start out with. One, if your student is an online gamer and you're somebody who is in the practice of checking the things that they do on their cell phone, for example. Yes, I look through my student's Instagram, Facebook account. Don't forget online gaming platforms. If your student has PlayStation or Xbox Network, they can message on those things just like they can on social media apps. We had a case recently where a high school student was blackmailed for $500 because he sent a nude picture of himself because he thought he was sending the picture to a 16-year-old girl in Germany who was going to send one back. When in reality, he was sending one to a creepy old guy that lived not in Germany, who used the photo to essentially blackmail him. It said, you send me $500 or I'm going to mail this photo to your parents. So this sort of thing is happening all over the place. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about online gaming or all the apps where we've seen students get in trouble. The fact of the matter is, anytime they can send a message, and especially if you're not going to check it, this is where this stuff festers and grows. So if you have a student that is on PlayStation or Xbox Network, I would ask to see those messages. Second, if you have a younger student who only has an iPod, a lot of folks don't know that you can switch on and get on the Wi-Fi and have all these apps, even on something like an iPod. You don't need a data plan to use an iPod to connect to these apps. You just have to have a wireless connection. So even if you've got a great filter at home, if your student takes their iPod over to a friend's house and logs into their Wi-Fi, they can download all this stuff too. So it's not just cell phones. Again, wherever this stuff can be used, that's where we're seeing these issues. So I asked the students to raise their hands if they could name 5 of these. Almost every hand goes up. I always ask the parents, any brave person out there think you could name 5 of these? And I won't call on you, but you can just do a quick count. Sure, probably quite a few of you. Anybody get to 7? 10? What if I told you that even though you can name most of these apps, if you don't know what this one is, you can be sued because you're not responsible for looking at all of your students' social media use. Crazy, right? This is a relatively new app. It's been around for a while. It's called After School. It functions like an anonymous Yik Yak. If you're asking yourself, well, what's Yik Yak? That's another anonymous app. And so the whole concept of all these is students are using all of these to engage in things like cyberbullying and sexting. The court cases we're going to talk about, their actual arguments are this. If you're sitting on the stand and they ask you, do you know what apps your child is using? In one of these cases, we actually had one of the plaintiff's attorneys, right, so one of the victims that was suing the bullies and their parents, put these on cards and hold them up to the parents that were sitting on the witness stand and saying, do you know what this app is? And sometimes if it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, the parent's like, yeah, I know what that is. Do you check that? Yeah. But one of the cases that we dealt with was students that were bullying each other on what we call, or an app that we call Kick Messenger. They held it up and said to the parents, do you know what Kick Messenger, do you know what this app is? And the parents said, no, I don't. They used that evidence of the parents not knowing all the apps on their kids' phones to make an argument that they had essentially been negligent in parenting their kids. And we'll talk about some of these cases. The judges in these cases say, yeah, that's a claim that we'll allow to go forward. Now, my dad is a flip phone guy. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say flip phone guy? I don't ever want a smartphone because that thing's going to be smarter than me. I'm never going to use it. I don't want any of that face-to-face stuff. That's almost a direct quote. We got him to start texting only 2 years ago. He finally confessed to me one night after we had a few too many. I said, Dad, why didn't you text? He said, because as soon as I started texting, your mom can reach me anytime she wants, right? So I get it. I totally understand. I cannot imagine trying to keep up with all of this stuff. I am sincerely scared, though, that the argument in these cases is very literally, if you refuse or don't invest efforts and time into understanding all of this stuff, they are making arguments that you are becoming a negligent parent, which to me seems crazy. I think my parents did a great job of raising me. Well, I guess that's debatable, especially if you ask my wife. But the concept remains, right? They are expecting you, by they I mean plaintiffs' attorneys, law enforcement, to have an understanding of these things and to be able to converse with your kids about the risks and understand the things that they're doing on these apps. I want to touch on just a couple of them. We can't talk about all of them, but I want you to take specific note of these. This one at the top is called Poof. Any of you heard of Poof? Here's how it functions. Let's say that you have a son or daughter, and you say to your son or daughter, I don't want you to have Kick Messenger, right? One of the more popular messaging apps among kids now. Your son or daughter says, okay, they don't want me to have Kick Messenger. So they download the Poof app. If you open the Poof app, it has a list of all the other apps on your phone. So they download the Poof app, then they download the Kick Messenger app. Within the Poof app, they check the box next to Kick Messenger. They then set a touch code on their phone. Let's say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're walking in after school one day, and you're sitting there, right? It's after practice. They come in, hey, everybody, phone's on the table. In their pocket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They put the phone on the table. You open the phone up, you look, you don't see Kick Messenger, and you don't see Poof. They vanished. You check the phone, good job, you didn't download Kick Messenger, you check all the other apps that they use, no problem, hand the phone back. After dinner, they go to do homework, go up to their room, phone back in the pocket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, Kick Messenger is back up on their phone. They've hidden it from you using the Poof app. There are other apps like this, one's called Hide It Pro, for example. So even if you are diligent in checking what your student is doing on social media and online, they can be hiding these apps from you intentionally. And so what we're seeing is that even the more parents are getting involved in checking for understanding, looking at what students are doing online, the more we see apps that are developed to, again, kick that can of supervision down the road, right? We are driving kids toward anonymity because that's what sells to them. Snapchat's worth $18 billion, right? It's like 4 years old. That's why. These right here are what we call vault apps. You may have heard of it, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but that case out of Canyon City, Colorado, where they had like hundreds and hundreds of kids who were involved in this sexting scandal. Here's how this app works. On your phone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone, you've got a calculator, right? You can pull open your calculator, you can do math on it, no problem. This app is designed to look exactly like a calculator. So you download this app, you hide your regular calculator app somewhere deep in one of the folders of your phone, and on this calculator app, you can set a passcode. So for example, you hit the period button, so you open it up, it looks just like a calculator, you can do math on it, right? If you're sitting in a restaurant, inevitably your kid's got their phone out, right? If you're sitting in a restaurant, and you say, hey, let me do the math of 20% of that tip. You can open up this, you'll think it's just like a calculator, right? You can do math on it, figure out 20%, hand the phone back. In reality, what the student has done is set a 4-digit passcode. You hit the period button, you enter your passcode, you hit the period button again. It opens up a hidden vault to store pictures and videos. The app is specifically designed to look like a calculator or look like something else on the phone that you're not likely to check. And within it, they have these hidden archives where students can hide things. So if you haven't before, check your student's phone for these things called vault apps. This one's one of the most popular, It's called Calculator, and it's got a little ampersand after it. A percentage sign after it. So if you haven't, check for these vault apps. This one right here, Kick Messenger, is one that is particularly troublesome. I do not let my daughter have Kick Messenger, for what that's worth. The intent of Kick Messenger is this: you can send messages back and forth anonymously. So what you'll have, you ask your son or daughter, do they have Kick Messenger? If yes, ask them, have they ever been sent a message they didn't want, or somebody tried to friend them that they didn't know, and tried to send them, for example, an inappropriate picture. Odds are they probably have had that happen to them. They actually took a group of registered sex offenders that were in prison for sex crimes, in one particular study, sat them all down in a room and handed them phones with all these apps on them. And they said, tell us what you think of these. How would you use these to commit your crimes? Inevitably, in every single group that they surveyed, Kick Messenger was the one that won out. One particular person said, the first thing that I thought was, wow, I can be whoever I want to be, I can get anybody I want, I can achieve my glorification through this app. This is one that if your student has it, I would have a conversation about what they're using it for and whether or not they've had any of these inappropriate contacts. Finally, Snapchat. All of your students probably have it, at least understand what it is. Snapchat is one that I don't think is necessarily bad, but it's one that I would want to have these conversations about because of how the app functions. So for those who don't know, this is what a snap looks like. If you Google Snapchat right now, these are the snaps that you'll see, right? This guy pretending to be Ron Burgundy. Pretty elaborate art in terms of what you can do, and these are actually well done. But here's the idea. You take a picture of yourself, because nobody actually takes a picture of anything other than themselves. You can add text to it. So for example, you could say, hey, how you doing? You can put any text you want. It's a brief little snippet of text. Then you can draw on it. You can do things like make this art and make it look like a picture. And then, most importantly, you actually set the amount of time that the recipient will be able to view the picture. So in this particular case, this person got done with their, composing their snap, and they set that that it will last for 4 seconds. So this is the view from the recipient, right? So this kid sent this picture to one of his or her friends, who took a screenshot of it. But the idea is this: the picture that the recipient receives only lasts for a few seconds, somewhere between 3 and 10. The sender sets how long the picture is visible. So one of the most common apps that we see students use to engage in sexting is Snapchat. So it's one that, like I said, that I would have these conversations, because this is how Snapchat now advertises itself. This is how it used to advertise itself. They caught a lot of flack because students were using it to sex, right? To send inappropriate pictures back and forth, because these pictures would disappear. So it's one that they've tried to kind of clean up their image, but this was the genesis. This is what you used to get when you Googled Snapchat. It's one that, like I said, we see, for example, a kid taking a picture of his private during class using Snapchat. Probably 60 to 70% of the sexting cases that we talk to schools about involve Snapchat. Okay, so real quickly, before we get into these cases and the consequences of the laws, I put this first because I used to put it last and I never got to it, all this information. But there are ways to know whether or not your son or daughter has these apps. And so this is kind of the guide that you can use. When you go to the App Store or the Android Store, they've got similar little symbols. But here's the idea. Type in the app that you want. So whether that's a secret app, whether that's Poof, whether that's After School, whichever app it is, type that into the App Store. It'll bring up that particular app. Then you look. If it says open, that means your student has it on their phone actively right now. Maybe it's hidden by an app like Poof, but they've got it on their phone. You just might not be able to see it by scrolling through. If it has the Get button, that means they don't have it. They never downloaded it. If it has this cloud with the download arrow, that means they had it at one point but deleted it. So you can use this to do a little bit of an investigation if you think that your son or daughter might not be honest about the apps that they have. So this is something that I like to put at the beginning. Any questions about this or any of the apps we've covered so far? Okay, so cyberbullying. This is pretty simple, right? This is engaging in some sort of hostile, repeated behavior online with the intent to bully somebody, harass somebody. So bullying, as it used to be understood, was give me your lunch money, no, punch in the face, we're done here, right? Everybody was really good at dealing with that. School administrators, parents, everybody kind of understood that. Cyberbullying is a whole new beast. But the thing that I impress upon students is the exact same laws that apply to you doing something like threatening or hitting somebody in the face or sending somebody a mean message apply to cyberbullying. The problem is, oftentimes the threat of physical violence is treated significantly worse when law enforcement gets involved than what physical violence actually used to have for consequences. So judges, they really don't have a great way to get at this stuff, so they're trying to use all these big, strong laws we have out there for things like making terroristic threats and applying them against cyberbullying cases. So we've seen this a lot. 95% of students by the time they get out of high school will have seen cyberbullying. I think that number's probably higher. In other words, 5% of them are lying. I think all students eventually see some form of cyberbullying by the time they get out of high school. More importantly, only 5% of teens that see cyberbullying try to do anything to help, whether that's intervene on behalf of the victim or report it. The fact of the matter is, cyberbullying is happening out there, and even if some instances are reported, oftentimes that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. The problem is, whether it's law enforcement, school administrators, other parents, you can't intervene until you know what's happening. So one of the things I tell students is you got to report this stuff. In Nebraska, we actually have a statute which governs the consequences a school can impose for students who engage in cyberbullying. So this definition, an ongoing pattern of physical, verbal, or electronic abuse, that is Nebraska's unicameral, essentially saying the exact same things that a school can do for actual bullying, or what traditional bullying, whatever you want to call it, also apply to cyberbullying. So a school can, for example, impose the loss of extracurricular privileges. Just earlier this year, I got a phone call from the school who said, we have a girl, and this is the 18th time she's been reported for cyberbullying one of her classmates. What we want to know is this: can we kick her out of all extracurriculars, meaning no sports, no band vocal, none of those extracurricular sort of events, no prom, no homecoming, for engaging in cyberbullying? The short answer to that school, yes. Parents threatened a lawsuit, right? Didn't kick the kid out of one day of classes. We get a lot of lawsuits. We get a lot of threats of lawsuits. If I had a nickel for every time I talked to a lawyer who was going to sue the school on behalf of the parents, I'd have a lot of nickels. If the school imposes consequences such as you're going to be kicked out of class for 3 days, never once had a threat of a lawsuit. You're kicked off the wrestling team, you're kicked off the dance team, you're kicked off the cheerleading team. Kicked off the cheerleading team is by far the one that's most likely to get us phone calls, right? Extracurricular consequences in Nebraska are restricted by almost nothing. Nebraska State Constitution says students have a right to a free education. Every single time we've had a parent try to challenge whether or not the student can have extracurricular consequences imposed, they've lost. There is almost no right to engage in extracurriculars. And so this is one of the ones that I talk to students about, right? They care a lot if they get kicked off the basketball team. They care significantly less if they can't go to math class for a few days. And so this is one of the consequences that I try to drive home, because there's no restriction on this. We've had some schools that have thought about bullying is happening so much among students, can we kick them out of extracurriculars for the rest of their high school career? There is just very little restriction on this, and so it's one of the things, like I said, that I highlight for students. There's not much that can happen. If the school imposes a 6-day out-of-school suspension, meaning the student has to miss class, parents can get a full-blown hearing in front of a hearing officer. They can appeal to courts. They can go through all that stuff. If a school says we're going to kick somebody out of all extracurriculars for a year, there's absolutely none of that. No appeals process, no anything. So this is one that we drive home in terms of the consequences for students. Civil consequences. Again, these are the ones that scare me the most in terms of cyberbullying. Because their argument is very simply, parents who don't track what their students are doing online and using these social media apps are somehow being negligent in their parenting. Now, to me, these claims are absurd. But the fact of the matter is, we've got some parents who are winning them. And we'll talk about a few of those cases. For example, this is a case out of Texas, the Escobar lawsuit. This one was filed because a girl was sending nude pictures to boys in her class. The boys in class started what they called a Klein Pose Facebook page, or Instagram page. Every boy that received a nude picture of a girl, or partially nude picture, would put it on this Instagram page. Eventually, the girls found out about it, and in this particular case, this girl was bullied so much after she ended up on the page that she goes several months receiving threats, people saying things like, hey, send me more pictures or I'll tell your parents that that you sent these pictures in the first place. She commits suicide. The parents file a wrongful death lawsuit. In Nebraska, for example, we see those happen often in things like automobile accidents, right? Somebody causes the death of somebody else based on negligence. Well, in this particular case, their argument to the judge was, if you knew what your students were doing on Instagram, you would have known that they were running this surreptitious, this hidden Instagram page, and you would have stopped them. Therefore, because my daughter committed suicide, you, parent of the kids who ran the Instagram page, are liable to us for damages. And in this particular case, the parents went in front of the judge and they said, Judge, there's no way that we should be liable for this. Not only would we have had difficulty finding it in the first place, our students did everything they could, literally trying to hide it from us. And the judge in this case says, sorry. If they can prove that the parents' failure to supervise what was happening is part of the reason that this occurred, this death occurred, they can go on with their lawsuit. This case ends up settling for $40,000 per family. This is what the lawyer said when the case was filed. They only asked for $1 in damages. The case settled for $40,000 per family. I would see the lawsuit being used as a mechanism and a vehicle to stop the conduct, not to win money. But the fact of the matter is, insurance companies are freaking out right now about liability for things like cyberbullying and sexting. If I was a parent of somebody who was using this technology, I would check my homeowner's policy. Typically, your standard HO3 coverages will cover things like if your students are engaged in inappropriate conduct like this, or if there's an allegation that as a parent you've somehow been negligent. The problem is, a lot of our insurance companies are getting wise to this game, and they're excluding from coverage things like electronic aggressors or intentional acts which cause damages. So it's very difficult to bully somebody unintentionally, right? Difficult to send a nude picture of yourself unintentionally. So we see a lot of these lawsuits popping up, and it's one of the things that scares us the most. We've had 4 or 5 of these threatened in Nebraska. Luckily, to my knowledge, none filed yet. This is another example. This is Alex Boston. One example of what we see very often is fake pages used to bully someone. So Alex's friends created what they called a fatbook profile. The idea was simple. They took her face, and using an app, they enlarged it to make her look bigger than she is. So they created this fake profile, and they included in it things like the languages she spoke. English, retardish, whorish. They made fake hobbies for her, said that she sold drugs, said that she did drugs, said that she engaged in sex acts with boys in class. They made fake YouTube videos, saying things like, she'll perform oral sex on any boy for 20 bucks. They put these videos on this fake Facebook page and only allowed other classmates to look at what was on the page, right? So they only accepted friend requests from people they knew. Eventually, Alex finds out about this, tells her parents bring it to the school imposes consequences, the parents decide that's not enough. The parents file a lawsuit against the classmates, the girls who created the page. And the lawsuit is essentially this. You creating that fake page, students, and you parents, for failing to find that they had this fake page, are liable for our damages. What were the damages? One, Alex had to see a counselor every day. She developed and had to take medication for depression and anxiety. They would literally drive her to school, try to drop her off at school, and she would start shaking and have a nervous breakdown. She was bullied enough that basically what their doctor said is it caused and created in her a condition of anxiety that required medication. So the parents went to court and they said, hey, help us pay for the costs of the medication, help us pay for the fact that she has to see a counselor. Oh, and by the way, pay mileage to us because we now have to drive her to another school, which is about 30 miles further away. They get to court, and the parents argue in front of the judge, Judge, we could not have found out about this, right? We didn't know that they were running this account. It was fake. We had no idea it even existed. They hid it from us. And the judge in this particular case, I don't really care. It's a question for a jury to decide whether the parent's negligence caused some part of the injury. This case ends up settling for an undisclosed amount, but we know it was in tens of thousands of dollars. Just recently, we had another case which settled out of court, but the parents and their homeowners insurance had one of these exclusions for electronic aggressors. Each of the 3 families that was involved forced to pay $75,000 apiece. 2 of the families had to sell their houses in order to pay off the judgment. Crazy stuff. This one's for my dad, too. All right. Another case, Audrey Pop versus John Doe's. And this one is, again, another example of the same sort of problem and phenomenon that we're seeing. So basically what happened in this case is a girl went to a high school drinking party. She was drinking with 3 boys, got really intoxicated, passed out. They assaulted this poor girl. They took pictures of it while they were doing it. It was alleged that one girl who knew the 3 boys was standing outside of the room guarding so that nobody would come in. Audrey, in this case, was the victim, found out that this had happened. The boys were selling these pictures to other kids in school. So each of the boys, when this particular case was reported to law enforcement, was charged with creation and distribution of child pornography in addition to sexual assault. Right? They had literally taken pictures of themselves committing multiple felonies. So each of the boys actually served 30 to 45 days in jail, minimum 30 days. So these were 16-year-old kids. They sent them to prison for what they had done. Didn't try them as juveniles, tried them as adults, and sent them to prison. The boys, it turns out after this, after 30 days in prison, were scared. They then were brought into a civil lawsuit where Audrey's parents sued all of the boys who were involved, and their parents, and the homeowners where the party was, and the girl who was standing guard. She filed a lawsuit against all of them because her daughter committed suicide. So Audrey commits suicide. Parents in California file a wrongful death claim. The boys were swapping pictures, selling them, and of course she became the subject of a lot of bullying. And here's what we know in terms of what's happened so far in this case. Several people have settled, meaning the insurance companies have settled on behalf of these folks involved. The home insurance company paid $100,000. The girl who covered it up, her parents were brought into the lawsuit, and her homeowner's insurance and the parents' homeowner's insurance paid $150,000. This is the one that scares me. And this is the one where I say, you know, if my daughter was this age, I would check my standard HO3 policy. I'd talk to my agent, hey, am I covered for this crazy stuff? Pause. One of the moms of one of the boys who was engaged in this is divorced from her dad. She lives in another state. It was not even her custody weekend. She's brought into the lawsuit. Her insurance company could have gone to court and said, wait a second, she wasn't even supposed to be supervising him during this time. The court in this particular case said she could have, at any point after this happened, checked his phone and found this stuff. So she will not be dismissed from this lawsuit. The lawsuit goes forward. So this mother who doesn't even live in the same state, who only saw the kid several weeks later after all this had happened, and after he'd been arrested, her insurance company paid $25,000 to get her out, and she wasn't even involved. So those are kind of the civil consequences that I'm talking about. Now the criminal consequences. We talked about this. In Nebraska, we've got a law which prohibits students and anybody from making what we call terroristic threats. This means you threaten to commit some act of violence, some crime of violence, with the intent to scare somebody, or in reckless disregard of the risk that that threat will cause terror. So in Nebraska, this is a Class 4 felony. I explain it to students this way. Down at the very bottom of our crimes, we have infractions, speeding tickets. Then we have misdemeanors. If you steal a candy bar, if you're caught, if you cause an accident and you were driving recklessly, right? Those are misdemeanors. Above that, felonies. Class 1 felony. Class 2 felony, that's murder and attempted murder. Class 3 felonies, things like violent sexual assaults. Class 4 felonies, that's threatening one of your classmates on Facebook, right? It's crazy. You can get in more trouble engaging in online threats than you can if you get a DUI. You can get in more trouble sending a threatening message to somebody, or for example, getting on one of these anonymous apps and saying, I'm going to bring a bomb to school, than you can if you steal a TV worth $24.99 or less. Very, very serious consequences for committing what they call terroristic threats. The reason students are being charged, it's not illegal in Nebraska to cyberbully, but it is illegal to threaten someone. There really is no other law or mechanism for law enforcement officers and judges to use when students are doing and saying threatening things online. So we're applying really old laws, which have been in place for dozens and dozens of years before the advent of cell phones, to apply them to students who are engaging in things like cyberbullying. And so we've got a lot of cases, and including states across the country now passing laws which make it illegal to engage in cyberbullying. So judges' responses. I go over this ad nauseum with the students. It does not matter if you're joking, right? We've had several cases in Nebraska. Student gets online, social media, says something like, I'm going to bring a gun to school. Law enforcement comes in to ask the student, why would you post that? Inevitably, I didn't know it was wrong. I was just joking. Right? Get all these responses. Judges in every single case, doesn't matter. Because when you commit a terroristic threat, you don't have to try to scare somebody. If you do it with an understanding, or you should have had an understanding, that it was going to cause people to be scared, it's still a crime. So judges are saying things like, I don't care if your intent was a joke, and I don't care if it was a private message. If you post something like this online, you have to have an expectation that people will read it and that they could be scared by it. Perfect example, Yik Yak. For those of you who don't know how Yik Yak functions, very similar to the After School app, which had the cat with the shades on it. Very similar type of app. Your name is not up there, and you can post anonymous messages. In other words, it's anonymous to everybody except for the people who run Yik Yak. So it's also tied to your geographical location. So if I were to get on the Yik Yak app right now and post something, only people within 10 miles of me could see it. So if people are posting things and you can read them, that means they posted them within 10 miles of you. So this, in one particular case, a student gets on the app and says, T. Hill going to do some bad stuff at school tomorrow. Classmates get online and say, like what? Please explain. T. Hill, and we only know this is T. Hill because law enforcement asked Yik Yak to turn over the user. The same kid who said going to do some bad stuff posted, let's say it involves a big boom. Immediately, the school reports it as a bomb threat. Law enforcement is called. 3 different branches of law enforcement show up at the school. Within an hour, they have contacted Yik Yak. Yik Yak sends them not only the information about who posted it, but also enough information that the forensics team at the police office were able to print out a map and put a little red X on the exact spot based on geographic coordinating where it was posted. So law enforcement knocks on this kid's, the door of this kid's parents' house and says, hey, we need to talk to your son. He made a bomb threat. The parents are like, what are you talking about? Go up to the kid's bedroom, he's still sleeping. They interview the student. Why did you post this? Why did you post this on Yik Yak? Why did you say it involves a big boom? I was just kidding. Law enforcement, of course, judges don't care. Student charged with making terroristic threats. Literally, he said while he was being interviewed, I didn't even think about it, right? It took me only a few seconds to post it. Doesn't matter. We see a lot of bullying cases, things like this. This was an actual case that we had. You're not supposed to use somebody's name on there, but remember, only people within 10 miles can see it. So often what will happen is students will use it to target other students using their initials. And this was the case, CS, where the school knew absolutely who these people were talking about. A lot of shooting threats across the country. We're receiving threats like this. You've heard that they recently closed down school in LA, closed down school in Wisconsin for one particular school. A lot of times that is a result of these sort of apps and students making threats on them. This is the case where these Rebecca's laws came from. This is Rebecca Sedgwick. One of her friends got on social media apps and started asking things like this. Why aren't you dead? You deserve to die. Wait a minute. Why are you still alive? Go kill yourself, drink bleach, and die. This goes on for months. Rebecca, at one point, has too much, climbs to the top of an abandoned concrete factory, jumps 200 feet to her death. They were going to host a funeral at school. The morning of the funeral, the girl who had been bullying her gets back on social media and posts, yes, I know I bullied Rebecca and she killed herself, but I don't give a bleep. Law enforcement in this case were forced to decide, what do we do? Is this a terroristic threat? Did she post anything about causing a threat or committing a crime of violence against somebody? Maybe, maybe not. They end up charging her. The Supreme Court of Florida says, you know what, we're going to let this one slide, but you better pass a law. That's where we get these Rebecca's laws. Last year in Nebraska, there were several senators who wanted to pass a Rebecca's law in Nebraska. We talked to them, we told them, I don't think criminalizing everything kids do is a good idea. And luckily, instead of passing a criminal law, which would outlaw and make a crime cyberbullying in Nebraska, they decided to pass an additional educational component piece. Over the next couple of years, they're going to work with schools to do more training on this stuff. Okay. Any questions about that before we get on to sexting? Question? Yeah.
Could legislatures prohibit that and make it
Good question. Could the legislature prohibit things like Yik Yak? They could try. They'd probably get sued. Of of course, right? Because, any lawyer will find a way to file that lawsuit. No good can come of this. I don't disagree with you, right? Like I said, there would be certain apps that I wouldn't let my daughter use when she was 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, up to high school age. There's not a lot that can be done. In fact, a lot of these app companies are now trying to do things to clean up their image. So, for example, Snapchat, Yik Yak, this after-school app, they've done a lot of things where they even say that somebody on our end will review every single post that's made, which is just completely bogus, right? Because then they'd see things like, I'm going to bring a gun to school, I'm going to bring a knife to school, and they would hide those. They don't. What the answer is here, I think, has to come then from, just the traditional educational parenting component, because companies like this aren't going away. In fact, now we're seeing more anonymity in apps, not less, and now apps being created to intentionally hide things from parents who are looking. It's a good question. It's frustrating, I understand, especially when I'm sitting up here telling you about lawsuits that you can be sued, even though your students are literally hiding the things that they're doing in some cases online. Okay, so sexting. The combination of the word sex and texting. The concept here is simple: sending inappropriate sexually charged messages, either nude or partially nude, or inappropriate text messages to somebody else. A recent study that was done, I think this is just fascinating. They asked high school students these questions, boys and girls, and they broke it down by sex. How many of you have sent one of these messages? 30%. I asked students today, have you seen this happening here? A lot of hands went up. This is happening. It's happening here. It's happening in every school across Nebraska. It's happening in every school across the country. This is not something that's only happening on the coast, right? I think for the most part it started there. This is happening in every school that I represent. I know it 100%. Because we've got studies like this which say 1 in 3 kids by the time they leave high school will send one of these messages. I have asked somebody to send an inappropriate picture of themselves. Almost 50% of boys, 20% of girls. I have been asked to send one of these pictures. By the time girls graduate high school, 2 out of 3 of them will have been asked to send one of these pictures. With boys, about 40%. It's happening. This one is the one that just drives me crazy. Were you bothered by the request to send a nude picture of yourself? 45% of boys, not at all. Almost 50% of boys that get this request say something like, yeah, no problem, I'll send one, right? I'm here to play. We had, in one particular case, and it's not, it's everybody, right? It's across all demographics, it's across all age groups. The fact of the matter is it's happening. We had one case, the daughter of a superintendent and the son of a mayor were exchanging these pictures back and forth. School found out about it, called me and said, what are we supposed to do? I said, you don't have a choice. Administrators in the state of Nebraska are required by state law to report any suspected violation of Nebraska's criminal laws. So if an administrator hears of somebody engaging in this stuff, they have no choice but to call law enforcement. It's one of the difficulties in this law, and it doesn't matter who has been doing it. We had one superintendent that had to call in his own daughter. I said, it's either that or they're going to take your certificate away, because you're a mandatory reporter of suspected violations of Nebraska law. Difficult stuff that comes up. If you find out that your son or daughter may have been involved, what do? There aren't any great answers out there, but the fact of the matter is, we know this stuff is happening. Kids are using codes. Even if you check their text messaging, you need to look and be aware of the fact that if they have a random number 9 in the text message, what that probably means is, stop sending me inappropriate messages because somebody's over my shoulder. Or maybe my parent is going to be checking my phone, so don't send me any more inappropriate messages. There's a whole sub-language in there too, which is why it's just absurd to me that people are winning lawsuits about parents not tracking this stuff down. But we've got all sorts of cases where law enforcement investigates. They found out that, well, really what was happening here is they were using slang to communicate with each other. So it's difficult. One of the most common things that we're seeing now is sexting, also known as what some people are calling revenge pornography. Essentially what happens is somebody sends an inappropriate picture to somebody else, and they use it as a way to extort something from them, to blackmail them in some way. Or in some cases, just to get back at them. I answered a call the other day. Boyfriend and girlfriend had exchanged nude pictures of each other. Boyfriend breaks up with girlfriend. Girlfriend sends nude pictures to all of the other guys on the basketball team of her ex-boyfriend. Brought into the office. Law enforcement was called. Why did you send the pictures? Oh, I just wanted to get back to you. Right? Happens all the time. And oftentimes, most of the time when we get these cases, it was boyfriend and girlfriend that had broken up, and now the picture's plastered all over. This is a case from Nebraska. This is the Kick Messenger app I was talking to you about. Again, this is the one that those people, when they interviewed those sex offenders in prison, said, this is one of the apps that I would use. This case actually happened in Nebraska. A man would essentially ask to be friends with and start chatting with people that he knew to be girls, or at least he thought were girls, on Kick Messenger. Once they accepted his friend request, he would send them nude pictures. And what he would try to do is convince them that because he sent them a picture, they could get in trouble. So these girls didn't ask for these pictures, he would just send them. In one particular case, one girl, most of the time what happens is if you talk to your students about it, they'll say, oh yeah, I just block them and delete them and don't talk to them anymore. One girl in one case says to this guy, hey, I got the picture, I don't want any more, don't send it to me. He takes a screenshot of that, crops out the part, everything except for the part that said, I got the nude picture. So he then says to the girl, either you send me a nude picture of yourself, or I'm going to tell your parents that you have a nude picture of me on your phone. She should have told somebody, but instead, she sends him a nude picture back. He then says, you're going to come meet me at the park at 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, or I'm going to send your picture to everybody. What happens in this particular case? Tuesday morning, girl goes down to her the window in front of her, in her bedroom. She has a basement bedroom. She takes the screen off. She goes to school. On the way back from school, she checks, screen's still off. Parents haven't seen it. She comes home after practice. They have dinner. She does her homework. Everybody goes to bed about 9:30. 9:50, the alarm on her phone goes off. She gets up, puts on all dark clothing, sneaks out of the window. She is going to run to the park, which is to the north of their house. She starts running across the driveway. It just so happens, and you really can't make this stuff up, the neighbor, not one across, but one house down, opens his garage door just as she's kind of making her way up the sidewalk, because he's going to wheel his trash out, because it's trash morning Wednesday morning. He sees this girl running, stops her and says, hey, what are you doing? She stops. He kind of had that weird feeling, he said. I talked to the superintendent about this literally the night after it happened. This guy wheeling his garbage out had a weird feeling. He's like, it's 10 o'clock, all the lights are off, she's not going for a run. He says, what are you doing? She stops immediately, breaks down in tears, starts crying, says to him, I sent this picture I shouldn't have sent. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did it. Now I'm going to meet this guy at the park. And he's like, of course not, we're going to go wake up your parents. They go wake up the parents. Parents call law enforcement. Law enforcement sends an officer down to the park. What they find there is a 55-year-old registered sex offender from the state of Texas. He's made his way all the way to Nebraska. The crimes that he was charged with and convicted in Texas, why he's a registered sex offender, inappropriate sexual contact with a minor, child abduction. I think, and everybody can be concluded, he was going to abduct this girl. Literally this close from seeing one of these cases in Nebraska. Had that guy not been wheeling his trash out, the girl said, yeah, I had planned to go to the park. She was so afraid that her parents were going to be mad at her for sending the picture, which is why I think these conversations have to happen, right? Even if somebody doesn't use good judgment, at any point along the line, I think we have to create an environment where students at least can understand, rather than go meet some stranger in the park, I got to tell somebody. And I think the difficulty is, and when I explain it to students, I think law enforcement officers especially are much more lenient when there's some sort of self-report, right? Or when it's preventing something, or when somebody's been extorted like this. But the problem is, they're all hiding this thing, what they're doing in terms of the sexting, from all the adults on purpose. And so their fear is, if I tell somebody, I'm going to get in more trouble for hiding it. Very similar circumstance to what happened in this case. This is a 16-year-old girl who met a 17-year-old male on Kick Messenger. This is a catfishing case. Have you heard the term catfish? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, so if you haven't, I explained it to the parents earlier this way. You remember that football player for Notre Dame a couple years ago who totally had that girlfriend that wasn't fake? And Notre Dame, and ESPN ran that big story on it, and this is his girlfriend, and they never actually met. And then it turns out it was one of his distant cousins in California that had created this fake persona that was his girlfriend. Well, that's the concept behind catfishing. Catfishing is when somebody creates fake profiles to dupe somebody else into thinking they're somebody that they're really not. So in this particular case, we have a 17-year-old male who starts talking to this 16-year-old girl. Here's how this guy operated. He would say something like, where are you from? She would say something like, I want it from Fairbury, Nebraska. Because students reveal way too much information. I mean, you probably know this, but so the girl in this case says, I'm a 16-year-old girl from Fairbury, Nebraska. This guy in this hypothetical says something like, oh, I'm from North Platte. Far enough away that they're probably not going to meet. Close enough, though, that this girl thinks, oh, I'm just talking to another kid from Nebraska. Every time she says something like, hey, let's talk on Snapchat. Hey, let's talk on Instagram. Hey, let's talk on Twitter. He's got a profile. They talk, they become friends. Eventually, he says, will you be like girlfriends? She says, sure. He asks over and over again. When you see the printouts of all their conversations after law enforcement investigated, this girl turned him down dozens of times because she said, I can't send these pictures, I'll get in trouble. Eventually, he says, either you send me a picture or I'm going to break up with you. Uses poor judgment, sends this guy a picture. He gets the picture and says, I'm going to share it with all of your classmates, and I'm going to literally print out copies of your nude picture and post them all over town, unless you come meet me at the park. Very similar facts. Mom, this girl, instead of sneaking out of her bedroom window, tells her parents. Parents send over a law enforcement officer, a young female officer, to investigate. They're going to send this female officer undercover, asking the girl, what's been happening. She shows her all the profiles, all the messages. This kid has on his Facebook page, I'm from North Platte, has a bunch of pictures. And so the law enforcement officer at this point really thinks that what she's going to find at the park is this 16-year-old kid, and she's going to charge him with things like enticement, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, solicitation of child pornography. So she gets in some of this girl's clothing, puts on a cap, gets in the girl's car, drives to the park, sits there and waits for a couple hours, and eventually the person that was going to meet this girl walks out of the bushes, and to everybody's surprise, including the law enforcement official, it was this guy. He has literally spent hundreds of hours painstakingly creating fake accounts on every single social media app that this girl wants to use to converse with. This is not the only type of case that we've seen like this. There are dozens that are popping up across the country every day. So it's these catfishing, it's these extortion cases. It's not just sending one picture, then it's what happens when you send that picture. Now we've got people saying things like meet me in the park. So that's why I tell the students at every grade level, it's not as simple as my boyfriend or girlfriend asked for one of these pictures, they promise they never send it to anybody again. That is very rarely where the circumstances end. We've got people in Nebraska that have been charged with these sexting crimes. In this particular case, it was a 21-year-old kid in Madison County. He was using images that he had obtained from 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls to try to convince them to engage in sex acts with them. He would say something like, I've got your picture, you need to come meet me, and I'm going to tell everybody and show everybody the picture. Crazy. This is, I think, one of the scariest cases, and this is what happens, and I use this case to explain to students what happens when you aren't reporting these things. This is Wisconsin versus Stanzel. This is a high school male who sets up a fake Facebook profile pretending to be a female. He pretends that he is a female at a neighboring school district. He asks the boys in his class to send him nude pictures. Many of the boys, because 50% of them are just willing to send it no matter what, right? Many of the boys send pictures. This kid then says to them, oh, hey, by the way, I'm not this girl in a neighboring school. I'm your male classmate. And you're going to come and engage in sexual acts with me. Otherwise, I'm going to show everybody the new picture you sent me. So these boys, 31 of them, eventually send this kid pictures and go engage in these acts with him. He then takes pictures of them engaged in the acts and continues to blackmail them for 10 years. In some cases, you have boys that have literally graduated from high school, walked across the stage with this kid, didn't tell a soul, went to college, would come back from college, or would come back on a holiday break from college, and he would send them messages saying, hey, I know you're back in town for Christmas, you need to come meet me tonight. So you've got dozens of boys that are sneaking out of their houses, meeting up with one of their former classmates to engage in this stuff. Nobody tells a soul. This goes on for 10 years. Finally, 2 of them are in a bar one night, and one of them says to the other, I got something I got to confess. I got something I got to get off my chest. I have been blackmailed by this person, our high school classmate, for 10 years. I've been doing these things. He's been taking pictures. The person he told turns and looks at him and says, you got to be kidding. Me too. That's the only reason anybody ever found out about it. None of the people that were asked to send one of the pictures initially reported it. None of them. None of the boys that sent the picture and then were told, you're going to come meet me, otherwise I'm going to show the picture, reported it to anybody. Nobody along the way, until these two boys realized, holy cow, they're making more victims other than us, they finally told law enforcement, and they discovered it was 31 people that they graduated with. Nobody told a soul. Okay, I got a 16-month-old daughter, so probably why it's funny to me. I think she's at the terrible twos at 16 months, by the way. Anyway. Okay, this is a case from Virginia. Girl sends a video to her boyfriend via Snapchat. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I'll go through these quickly. Boyfriend then gets the video, takes screenshots of it, right? Because what happens if somebody sends you a picture or a video on Snapchat? Ask your students when you go home, what happens if somebody sends you one of those on Snapchat that you want to keep? You take a screenshot of it. Boyfriend and girlfriend break up. Boyfriend sends all these screenshots to 3 of his classmates. The 3 classmates realize that this girl broke his heart, so what do? Well, they're going to get her back. They send a picture to everybody. Law enforcement comes in to investigate shortly after, and they find out that in a school of several hundred high school kids, only a handful have not received these pictures. They make every student take a piece of masking tape, put it on the back of the phone, and write their name on it. They gather all these phones, they take them down to the police station, and they draw this big 3-dimensional spider web where they figure out who sent the pictures. The girl who took the picture, took the video, and sent it to her boyfriend, she was charged with 2 felonies, creation and distribution of child pornography. The boyfriend was charged with 3 felonies, solicitation of child pornography, creation of child pornography when he took the screenshots, and distribution of child pornography when he sent the pictures on to his friends. The 3 boys that got the pictures and sent them on to everybody were each charged with 12 counts of distribution of child pornography. Because the kid, when he was taking the screenshots of the video, took 12 screenshots. So every single picture constitutes a separate felony. So these 3 boys in this case are each charged with 12 counts of distribution of child pornography. 17 years old, they are charged as adults in the state of Virginia. Very similar law to Nebraska's, which we'll look at here in a second. They select a jury. In the jury, one of the people actually selected to serve on the jury is the golf partner of the dad of one of the boys that's charged. Juries are made up of people from your county, right? So inevitably, some of the jurors are going to know these boys. They get done with the trial, they deliberate, the jury comes back unanimous, 12-0, convicted of 12 different counts of distribution of child pornography, required to register as sex offenders. These boys then appeal their sentence up to the Virginia Supreme Court. And their argument in front of the Virginia Supreme Court is this: you can't make us register as sex offenders at 17 or you'll ruin our lives. The Virginia Supreme Court unanimously upholds the sentences. Yes, we can, because in Virginia, you are required to register as a sex offender if you distribute child pornography. So these boys went to prison and are now registered sex offenders for the rest of their lives, starting at age 17. So I explained to the students, this is what it means to be a registered sex offender. Your life as you know it is never going to be the same. Right? You're never going to hold a certificate to teach, or a license to be a doctor, or a lawyer. Every single time you apply for a job, they do a background check. They're going to find this. And in this particular case, this court threw out the argument that it was one silly mistake made by kids when they were 17. More and more courts across the country now are saying the fact of the matter is, our laws are written in such a way that there is no exception. If you're distributing child pornography at any age, you're required to register as a sex offender. The same is true in Nebraska. Right? This was a private school in Nebraska where boys took videos of girls in the locker room. They sent their videos in empty lockers, they hit record, they walked out. Girls come in to change, boys then go in after all the girls have left the locker room, stop the recording, start sending the recording of the girls in the locker room to all their classmates. 5 kids in this particular school, each charged with class 4 felonies in the state of Nebraska. One of them happens to turn 19 when this case is pending. And the county attorney in that case decides to try him as an adult. The other 4 boys get 2 years of probation, including something that they call basically rehabilitative detention, meaning they have to go to the equivalent of a juvenile psych ward until they can prove that they're no longer a threat to engage in activity like this in the future. All of that just to avoid registration as a sex offender. We've got a lot of cases. I'm not going to talk about all of them. Other than this Colorado one, the interesting thing is, all of them happen in Big 10 states. So maybe we should have stayed in the Big 12, I don't know. But we've got a bunch of these cases that are popping up. This one from Canyon City, where essentially they were using these vault apps, like the calculator app I told you about, to exchange pictures. In this particular case, it was hundreds of kids and several hundred different pictures. They essentially were trading them like baseball cards. The student who obtained the most points, because each of the girls in class were given a different point level. So if you can get one of Rachel, that's worth 50 points. Whereas one of Sarah is only worth 10 points because she sends pictures to anybody who wants them. You see the game that they're playing. The boy who gets the most points is crowned the pimp of pictures for the year and has the full access to all the pictures. This is a case out of Michigan. This is 14 and 15-year-old boys using classmates' photos to blackmail other classmates. Here's what's happening here, in this case. One girl sends a picture to boy. Boy decides, I want a picture of this girl's friend. So boy says to the girl's friend, either you send me a nude picture or I'm going to give your friend's picture to everybody. Using the pictures of friends to blackmail other ones into sending photos. In this particular case, they're all under 16 years old. The county attorney was at their school 2 weeks before this happened, telling them that if you are engaging in this stuff, it is a felony. The reason in Nebraska and other states that we don't charge minors the same as we do adults is because they're not expected to understand the consequences of their actions. I told the students today, sorry, I have ruined sexting for you. I told you the consequences, right? So if law enforcement finds out you're doing it, you don't have an argument that you didn't understand. In fact, I made them repeat it several times. If you have a student that attended the session today, go home and ask them, what can you be charged with in Nebraska if you're convicted of, or if you're caught sexting? They'll tell you a class 4 felony. And I told them, now you're all on video. In Ohio, several similar cases, again, more of this rehabilitative detention, 5th-degree felonies. In New Jersey, there was, again, this sort of thing where New Jersey has a 2-year minimum for minors in juvenile detention. In this particular case, the kids bought what we call burner phones. I don't even know how you find a burner phone, but essentially they bought phones, which they use exclusively to send these pictures. One of the boys, between every class and at lunch, would go sit in the last stall of the bathroom and would sell the pictures for a certain value. If you want a picture of Rachel, you need to slide $50 under the stall door. Would slide the $50 under the stall door, then they would send the picture out by text message to the person who paid for it. Crazy, crazy stuff. In Pennsylvania, we have had cases where students have essentially aggregated all of the photos, kind of like they did on that the Instagram account I told you about earlier. This time they put them all in Dropbox, and then they sold the link to Dropbox. The way that it functions is, you put all your pictures in one place. Instead of having to send out the pictures, you send out the link. So they sold the link so that anybody who paid money could go and look at all the pictures that all the boys had gathered, and in the meantime, they're making hundreds of dollars selling the link. Okay, so in Nebraska, we're not going to belabor the point because you've heard me say it several times. It is a class 4 felony if you're caught sexting, even if you're under 19. It's very rare in Nebraska that the unicameral makes a distinction between minors and adults. In this particular case, they have made clear that even if you're under 19, it is still a class 4 felony. If you're the 19-year-old college freshman who just turned 19 and you're dating the now senior in high school, we've had this case, and you're exchanging pictures back and forth, you've now engaged in a class 3A felony, right? Really, really serious consequences, including required registration as a sex offender. There is an affirmative defense in Nebraska. It's called the boyfriend-girlfriend defense. Essentially, that's if you've got 2 kids over 16, under 19, they exchange pictures back and forth, and there was no coercion. You have an argument to get out of the case. But here's what's happened the 2 times we've seen this trial. Girl and boy who exchange pictures have separate trials. Girl is on the stand, or boy is on the stand, and their attorney says, now did she pressure you to send that picture? What does he say every time? Yes, because my mom and dad are sitting out there in the gallery, so are my grandparents. Of course they pressured me. The defense goes away. I get the question all the time. So you're telling me my 17-year-old daughter could have sex with her 17-year-old boyfriend, perfectly legal. But if they exchange pictures back and forth, they're both engaged in felonies. Yes, that's what I'm telling you. In Nebraska now, we've got surveys of county attorneys. Almost 80% of county attorneys have charged kids in Nebraska with class 4 felonies, outpacing the national average. The people charging these crimes, and especially the judges looking at them, don't take too favorably to this stuff happening. These are 2 suicide cases. Girl sent 1 picture to boyfriend. They break up. Boyfriend sent the picture, in the case of Jessica Logan, to 2 of his friends, who then sent the picture to everybody. By the time she hangs herself in her parents' bathroom, she's getting sextortion requests from New York. the picture's been forwarded to that many people. She gets messages from guys in New York, Pennsylvania. She lives in Ohio, by the way, saying things like, either you send me more pictures or I'm going to send these to all your friends. Okay, so what now? Parents, talk to your students. I've had a couple of schools do surveys after I've given this presentation, and one of the things they ask students is, you listen to Bobby talk, or you listen to Karen, one of my law partners, talk. Would you be open to a conversation with your parents about this stuff? In one case, 80% of kids, including high school kids, said yes. This is scary. I don't always know what to do. What if somebody sends me a picture that I don't want, right? What if the case, like the case in Virginia, I'm one of those students who gets a picture sent to me from a friend of mine in school that I didn't even ask for? Those are the conversations that I think you need to be having. I think the answer in that case is, you gotta tell someone. You gotta report it to your parent. Because if you don't, and you keep the picture, that can be evidence used against you if you didn't report it, that you have kept this picture with the intent to keep it, meaning you're now in possession of child pornography. So you need to have these conversations, and as most of the research bears out, even high school age kids are still willing to have these conversations with their parents, because a lot of this stuff just presents circumstances that are tough to deal with. Understanding these apps, again, I worry a lot about these lawsuits that are being filed, essentially for negligent parenting for not understanding these apps. And I think you got to report this stuff. Law enforcement, school administrators, if you got a boyfriend or a girlfriend that your son or daughter has, talking to the other parents if you think this sort of thing might be happening, talking to them. Got to prevent it, because if they get caught, the consequences are just too severe. I'm not going to talk about this, but I'll make sure you have access to these slides. I always get the question, well, what if we know this is happening? There's a lot of stuff that you can do as a parent, a lot of things that you might not necessarily think about now, like turning off in-app browsers, right? You're on Facebook and you see a link you want to click on, you click on it, it doesn't take you to Safari, it takes you to a browser which is in Facebook. Those can then be manipulated to go places, for example, around your firewalls at home, because your firewall thinks that the student's on Facebook, not using the browser. There's just a lot of those little tricks, I think, that as a parent I would want to know. And finally, what I told students, you have to think before you post this stuff. It doesn't go away ever. Everything that you write, everything that you post, and I know your administrators and tech folks have had basically a whole symposium today talking about a lot of this stuff. Heather Callahan, somebody else who's been talking to your students, she does an awesome presentation saying things like you're creating a digital footprint. It's important for them to understand that everything they're putting on social media is essentially being written into their own little digital book. And eventually an employer or a college or anybody who they're trying to get a job someplace, they're going to ask to look at that, or they're going to Google their names. Say no to pressure. Again, most of these instances occur that I get calls on and across the country. It was, we were boyfriend, girlfriend, we promised we'd never send the pictures to anybody, we break up, boom, they're distributed everywhere. And finally, I told students, you got to report this stuff. You only avoid that circumstance that happened in Wisconsin where those 31 boys were blackmailed if you report this stuff. Especially if it's some creepy person that you don't know. Better to report it than to risk that something like that might happen. Okay, and unless anybody has any good lawyer jokes, which I love, I've never heard a bad one, that's all I have. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, I'll stick around for a while. I know there's more to go through here, but if you have any particular questions, you're welcome to email me or send me a message, and I try to help you answer. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Bobby. Hi, I'm Brent Essing, and this is Ryan McDowell. He's going to be helping me out, and we're the technology coordinators here at Fairbury Public Schools, and we promise we will be brief. We wanted to share a little. I'll stay back here. Share a little bit about the Chromebook policy, and also what our school is doing to basically secure your Chromebooks that are in your home. So especially since all of this scary stuff Bobby was talking about. The first thing we're going to do is just tell you a little bit about the Chromebook itself. We've got a short video that kind of tells you what the Chrome OS is. So I'll get the audio put here.
So, you were on the internet using a web browser. You know, that thing with the address bar and back button and bookmarks. That thing you're in right now, up there. Yeah, that's your web browser. If you're like me, when you're on your computer, you spend something like, I don't know, 90% of your time on the internet in a browser. There's emails, chatting, you're reading news, watching videos, playing games, buying things, just to name a few. Which kind of makes the web browser the most important program on your computer. And if you think about it, it hasn't always been this way. You see, web browsers were first designed a long time ago with the old internet in mind. You know, back when it was slow and mainly just words with links that just send you to more words with links. Back before all of these innovations. So some guys at Google asked, what if we redesigned the web browser from scratch with an eye towards the new web? You know, maps, video, and web apps that are a lot more dynamic. And so they created Chrome, a web browser that's crazy fast on today's internet. And it's sleek and more secure, but mostly it's really fast. I mean, my biggest question when I boot up my computer is how long till I get on the internet, right? I mean, if there isn't any internet, I might not even use my computer. Did you know that even the fastest computers will still take like 45 seconds to boot up? 45 seconds! You can make a sandwich in that time. So here's what's going on when your computer's booting up. There's this list of things to do, stuff I'm sure you don't care about, but it cranks through them one at a time. What you probably notice is that your programs begin loading up slowly, and if you're like me, as soon as you see your web browser icon appear, you're like double-clicking it over and over and over. Let's go, buddy, I got some emails to read. Well, all of this stuff is called your operating system. And over time, it gets rusty, and your once fresh computer gets slow. Well, Google was like, wait a second, if your operating system's a hassle and all you're really using it for is to get on your web browser, to get online, then maybe we don't need this anymore. What if when you pressed on, you were on the internet in seconds? What if your browser was your operating system? And so check this out. This means that you don't have to deal with managing programs, or nagging updates, or lost files, or confusing settings, or blue screens of doom, and there's no nagging updates. Just your browser. Which means you can still listen to music, you can watch movies, interact with friends, you're creating documents, you're playing games, you're writing your emails, you're doing all of this stuff that you were already doing on the internet. But here's the thing, none of this is stored on your computer. What? None of it, you ask? Yeah, none of it. Really nothing? Yeah, nothing is stored on your computer. Well, where is it? It's on the internet. You know, like when you access your emails from your computer and your phone. The email, it isn't stored on either device. So if everything's stored on the internet, then your phone, your computer, all of these devices are what people call stateless. Which is kind of a big word, so maybe just remember this. Chrome is a totally rethought web browser. You can download it right now on your computer. But Chrome OS is a totally rethought computer that lets you stop worrying about your computer so you can focus on the internet. Which is what most of us use our computers for nowadays, anyways.
All right, so that's kind of a brief overview of the Chromebook if you're not familiar with it at all. We're going to cover just a few things here. We're going to kind of skip around, but all this is available on the parent page on Fairbury Public Schools so that you have all this information and all these resources. So go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, what is the One-in-One initiative? It's 7 through 12, 24/7 access if you choose as parents to allow your students to take the device home. And we also in the intermediate school, 3rd through 6th, have a single device for each student also, but they do not take it home. It's a kind of a cart model, so just so you're aware of that if you didn't know that. And so what it's going to do is it is going to allow your student to not only work on their assignments at home, but also, at school, but also at home. So, that's one of the most important things that why we decided to go with the one-to-one initiative. But it also is great for collaboration and communication, and also just to improve workplace and college skills for your student. Next slide. All right, this is kind of what it looks like. You probably heard from your student already. We're pretty excited today to get their new Chromebook and the case, and we chose a vertical case so that they can not only use it as a separate bag if they want, but they can also put it into their existing backpack and just slide the computer in and out of the case. And it has some hard sides on it to protect it. And not all the devices are the same. We're repurposing some of the other older Chromebooks that we have. So 7th and 8th grade have some different devices than 9 through 12. So just so you're aware of that, if your student brings a computer home and it doesn't look like that one, well, that's because they're probably a 7th or an 8th grader, and we repurpose some computers for that. All right, go ahead and skip that one. And that one. And that one. Okay, one of the items that we decided to include for the one-to-one initiative is a program called Canvas. And what this is a learning management system. And what it enables our teachers to do is to post almost all of their assignments. They can create quizzes, online quizzes, exams, all kinds of things, all from this LMS. And it's kind of a one-stop shop for your student and you, that you can kind of look what's going on and how your student's doing, and it ties in with our Power School so that they can grade assignments and push them over to Power School also. A great tool. When I kind of surveyed the students today, just about all of them have had a teacher give an assignment or have them interact with Canvas in some way or another. Very powerful tool. If you want to know more about this, you can stop by anytime and we can show you some more information. Karen, our technology integration specialist, has done a great job of teaching the teachers every Wednesday since September on new ways to integrate Canvas into their curriculum. And there's also a calendar view where they can kind of see exactly what's going on. If there's an assignment that is due, then they can see that. It's really good. All right, we're going to go over just some brief Chromebook care, and I'm going to show you this short video that the students created. They did a great job on it, just some basic care items, some do's and don'ts, and they did a great job on it. You guys will appreciate this.
You gotta be kidding me. Alright, we're just looking it up. Lyndon!
Yeah.
Will you bring me that Chromebook?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Don't carry it like
Oh,
that!
sorry.
Gee. Still don't have it. Hey, Lyndon?
Yeah.
Will you bring me that Chromebook?
You bet.
Nice carry. Always be smart when using your Chromebook.
We're always watching.
Lyndon! Seriously, you are going nowhere in life. Stay off your phone.
Really? I'm sick of this.
Hey Jesse, you should have this cord going across the hallway like this. There you go.
Nice.
You bet.
Hey, Jared, you should know that before you do that.
Alright, I forgot everything.
It's all good. Hey, it's Chromebook.
Yeah, she really liked my drum. Oh, man. Computer's dead. Works today.
Time we gotta send someone a picture. So this is good.
The wrong way. Got your computer out? Did you work on your project? Why don't you have yours out, Izzy?
Because I was foolish and I didn't charge it last night.
She didn't cut the board. What's that without the project? Why don't you have yours? Nothing. Mine's dead.
Should have charged it like I charged mine.
Oh.
The wrong way!
The right way.
The wrong way.
Class, there's gonna be a test tomorrow.
The right way.
Alright, class, we have a test tomorrow.
Wrong way.
I should have only doing all of my homework. Oh, look at your little chinchilla helping do my homework.
The right way.
Although you may get lonely doing your homework, there are no animals allowed on the computers.
It's lunchtime. Lunchtime.
Here's your new Chromebook.
It's mine?
Sure is.
Awesome. Sweet. Oh, here, I got some stickers for you too. Stickers to put on my computer too? That's awesome. Sweet. Got my laptop from last week. Now I can put some vinyl decals on it. Look. I need to plug in. No. Yes. No. I need you to plug in.
No, first come, first serve.
Alright.
All right, they did a great job on that, but that's just a few ways where your students learn today to take care of their device, so you know what to look out for now. So, all right, we're going to just briefly cover a few of these things. All of this stuff is in the Chromebook policy and usage handbook, and we'll show you a couple places where that's located. One thing on this, we will turn these in May for cleaning and maintenance, so they won't be using them over the summer, so just be aware of that. Let's see, we've got stop it class listed there. If your student has done something inappropriate in the class, a teacher can assign a stop it ticket. And what that entails is immediately they'll be placed on restricted internet, which they will only be able to access Canvas and Google. And then they will be required to attend a session with Mrs. Dukes that has some curriculum based on their infraction. So it's all tailored toward what their infraction was. And it depends on if there's multiple infractions, it will spend a little longer time than it will be on the first time. Your student can kind of explain a little more about that. Go ahead to the next slide. Screen cleaning. Please don't get the Chromebooks wet. We want to try to use just a soft microfiber cloth to clean them. You could use a approved computer screen wipe that might be alcohol based is okay. Just use common sense on cleaning. Make sure that your student charges their device at home. We are not going to install outlets throughout the rooms so that everybody can be plugged in, so they need to come charge. They should last all day, should last 10 hours. So. Everything should be stored on Google Drive. Google Drive is unlimited, so they can store as much data as they want. It's all unlimited, so shouldn't store anything on the device itself. The asset protection policy, that's what you paid $15 for tonight. What is covered on that is the first incident of damage, accidental damage would be free. So if you break the screen or damage to the keyboard or something like that, that would be, the first one would be free. If there's a second incident, the student will pay for the replacement cost, and these are some examples of the cost. Screen would be $100, the keyboard touchpad $50, power cord $25, Chromebook case $30, strap $7, full replacement cost device is $300. That would be the Chromebook, the charger, and the bag. And of course, if this happens multiple times, then there may be disciplinary action. One thing that isn't covered is losing the device. So we do have the ability to submit a police report, and it will push out software to the device, and actually can take a snapshot of the next person that opens it if it's submitted that way, and the police can then look at that photo and they can locate it via GPS, but only if it's functioning. So, but that is a possibility. Next slide. Okay, Go Guardian. This is the monitoring software that we use to not only filter the device, but also teachers can use it to monitor your students. So we're going to just show you kind of what that looks like. And this would be the administrative screen that any teacher can access, or administrators, and they can kind of look at what's been going on in a time period. This one's from December 20th to December 21st, and obviously we had a lot of users today, so we actually accessed, is that 3,254 Google Documents today, 975 YouTube videos, and 5,183 Google searches. So that seems crazy, that amount, but that's just your students today. So, and then we can kind of see, you know, the top sites and that kind of thing, and we can monitor that. And we can also then, if you scroll up there, Ryan, we can go to, we can do a blacklist, which means things that are blocked. A white list would be things that are allowed, and this is the categories that we do not allow, and this is when they're at school or at home, okay? Both, it follows the device. Academic dishonesty, controlled substances, malicious sites, pornography, sexuality, social, and time wasting. Each one of those are kind of broken down into subcategories too. And then when they're put on a restricted internet, then it obviously gets a lot more aggressive, the filtering. So that's kind of how that's broken down as far as whitelist and blacklist. And then what we can do is we can look, and this records everything. We can look at what YouTube videos are being watched and see who they are, who's been watching them. We can go to Google searches, and we can see exactly what they typed in, exactly what they were searching for. We can go to Google Docs and see what documents were created and what documents were looked at. And then we can go to apps and extensions and see what extensions were installed on each device. And then we can also drill down further, and we can click on the individual user, and we're not going to do that right now, and we can click at exact history, exact what websites they went to, what the Google searches were, and it breaks it down by individual user. So with that, it's not perfect, okay? So I suggest that if your students are on the internet, you should be watching them, okay? It isn't perfect, but it does show history and things like that, but please monitor your students. Now, what we've set up for teachers, they can go to here and they can start a session when your students are in class, and they can, the teacher can actually create this timeline where they're monitoring the student during class, and then it kind of tells if they're on task or not. We've just pulled up some test students here, and you can see exactly when they've switched to different tabs. And then we can also go to screens. Oh, the session ended, didn't it? Go ahead and start a new session. Go up to session, or yeah, go there, all classrooms. Start session. All right, and then you can click on screens, and we can actually see a live view. Now, they're probably all asleep right now, the computers we had set up, but you can actually see a live view of what they're looking at, and then we can also close tabs and open tabs, and it does notify the student when they're being monitored by the teacher. Okay, this isn't running at all times, this is only running when the teacher says start session. And then we can also open tabs for them if the teacher wants to put them in a specific place. We can open tabs. We can, you know, Ryan's going to just type YouTube, and it sends it to that particular student, and it'll open the YouTube tab for them. And then we can also click on lock. There, you can see it open up the YouTube tab. You can click lock, and it will lock the screen of the student so that they can be focused on the teacher. There you can see the lock screen. We purchased this software so that the teachers can really use it to enhance the learning in their classroom and really direct the students and to become more focused on what's going on. There you can kind of see a timeline of what's going on there. All right. So, additional information that you may need is on the Fairbury Public Schools website. And when you go to the website, there's a tab that's just parents, and you can go down, there's one-to-one Chromebook resources there. When you click on that, there's rationale, there's the policy is there. There's Chromebook Care, there's Parent Resources, and there's facts. So there's all this information that we've provided you with. It's all right there. And that's where we're going to cut it off. And so if you have any questions, now's the time. So questions about what we've covered here. We went pretty fast, but we don't want to keep you real long. So
Are these replacing books? Are textbooks going to be replaced?
probably not completely, no. I mean, this is just another tool that they can use. Other questions? Good question.
They're expected to take these home every night?
To charge them, yes, if you choose to. You can choose not to allow them to take them home. That's your choice.
But there's no actual charging stations, I mean,
Well, if they don't take them home, they will check them in at the media center, and then we will charge them.
I'm just a little concerned. Some of these backpacks are pretty full.
I understand. I totally understand. I've seen them. Other questions?
Can parents get on and change the restricted sites to like gaming?
The parents cannot, no.
You know?
So, I will continue to update resources on here. I can give you some ideas of things that you can do at home on your home routers that you can do some restrictions also. There's some free stuff out there, like OpenDNS and some other things like that that is really easy stuff to set up.
If your child does something inappropriate, has to go to the class, are the parents notified?
Yes, they are. And it'll also be recorded on Power School in the disciplinary action. One other thing, if you don't have internet at home, there is offline access for documents. Your student learned that today, or they might learn it tomorrow, how to synchronize documents to their computer so that they can access them offline. That was one of the sessions that they did today. Karen's got some comments there.
You can't let me off without saying a couple of things. Okay, I just want to end the note with something positive, because I know after you saw Bobby Trudy's presentation and you look at the Go Guardian and everything, I'm sure parents are really apprehensive about the technology that is in their students' hands now 24/7. But let me just tell you some of the positive things, because I've been working with teachers now since the start of school, getting them ready for the one-to-one. I've been sharing wonderful resources for them to use. Canvas is a great tool for an online classroom presence. The students can be monitored, and teachers are going to be doing that, so it is a safer environment than having no monitoring system. But there are great educational resources out there, and I think it will highly benefit our students. We've done a lot of work as a technology committee looking into this, and there are just wonderful, wonderful resources. So don't let yourself get too negative. We want you to be aware. We want you to have conversations with your students. But also know that students are creating great projects out there. There are lots of things for teachers to integrate where students are using creativity and problem solving. And it isn't going away. We can't stop the progression of technology in our world, but we can teach our students to use things appropriately. And that's where good parenting comes in. So that's why we wanted to share this day with you and share Bobby Trudy with you, that his information, so you'll be aware and talk with your students. So I just wanted to share that.
Great.
There are positive things happening in Fairbury Public Schools.
More questions? Any more questions?
Are they password protected?
They are password protected by their username and password for the school. So only users that have at fairburyjeffs.org can log into their device. So you can't log in with an @gmail.com account. All right, well, if there's no more questions, make sure that if you have not signed in on the computer that you sign in. Make sure you sign in. Also, if you need help with e-registration, there's going to be some ladies out here helping